What's going on, guys? Briar Rabbit here. Today we got a brand new challenge mode for the King's Fall raid. Of course, it is Golgoroth, and the big change this week is that each member of your fire team has to get Golgoroth's gaze during each damage phase. So it's a little bit different, especially for people who run the one orb strategy. But as I'll show you in this video, it's actually not that complicated to complete, and it's fairly easy if you've got a somewhat competent fire team. This was completed by me with an LFG group that I found on an LFG site. So again, it's not that big a deal. We actually didn't have much problem with it. This was our second attempt at it. The first attempt was me just dying by orbs. So it was my fault that we didn't finish the first attempt. And here's how we did it. So the big change, obviously, since everybody on your fire team has to get the gaze, you have to take that into account with your strategy. But we wanted to stick with the single orb strat as well. So what we did was we just ran it as normal for the first orb. We had 5 fire team members go down into the pit to do damage to Golgoroth, and 1 guy stay up to get the gaze. The difference started when we hit about 15 seconds left of the first gaze. At that point, I would jump out of the pit and get into position so that I could take Golgoroth's gaze to continue that gaze flow. As I did that, the rest of the fire team then came out of the pit as well, and we had numbers assigned to each person. So I was number 2, the next person was number 3, would then get the gaze by shooting Golgoroth in the back, 4, 5, 6, and we just repeated this method. This ended up being pretty easy. You see, we didn't do a whole lot of damage to Golgoroth during this first phase, but again, it was a brand new strategy. We were still working it out, but actually in the second phase, we did a ton of damage, and I think it only took us 3 or 4 phases to actually complete the thing. So it really is not that difficult, and you can still use the one orb strategy, although it's kind of modified a little bit because everybody does have to get the gaze once, but you don't have to go through all the bubbles or do it kind of the original normal mode way that we all thought it had to be done. Instead, you just do the one bubble strat. Everybody jumps out and just transfers the gaze between them. You don't have to worry about the orbs that Golgoroth shoots too much either, because you have a bunch of people outside who can be shooting those so they don't kill any of one member of your fire team. One thing to keep in mind is the 6th guy. The Golgoroth's gaze never actually transfers from him until the actual, the whole phase is over. So he will get a lot of kind of those Golgoroth orb things fired at him. So a little bit of help by the rest of the fire team to shoot those things is often appreciated by that 6th guy. But as you can see, it really isn't that difficult. You're going to still use that single orb strategy if that's what you've been using. You can use the 2 orb strategy if that's what you've been using. And the only difference is that when everybody jumps out of the pit, you just start transferring Golgoroth's gaze back and forth until all 6 guys have completed it. You don't have to do it while people are in the pit. You don't have to do any of that stuff. It's actually not that difficult. I will say, I find it somewhat more interesting than the War Priest challenge mode last week. I was a little bit disappointed by that War Priest challenge mode. I didn't find it very challenging at all. In fact, I didn't think there was a whole lot of difference between the way I ran that normally and the way that it was to be run through the challenge mode. This week at least changes up a little bit. If you want to get the challenge mode completed, you actually do have to somewhat change the way you run this, unless you do run it, with a 6 orb strategy every time you run it. But I don't know why anybody would do that. It's just more difficult, and you end up running out of ammo by the 3rd or 4th orb anyway. But as you can see, I've jumped out. Immediately I almost jump out. I put a couple of rounds into Golgoroth, but I want to be damn sure I'm ready to take that gaze. The first gaze guy is counting down. When he gets to about 3, 2, 1, I'm shooting Golgoroth in the back, making sure I get that gaze, and then I'm just worried about the orbs. But I don't have to worry about them that much because very soon after, the 3rd guy is getting the gaze, and I've been relieved from orb duty. So again, it's not that difficult. It's actually more interesting, I think, than the War Priest. But again, I would have liked to see a little bit more challenge here. I'd like to see a little bit more meat on the bone. I had originally thought that the challenge modes for King's Fall were actually intended to add some replayability to it, and I guess they do to some extent, but really it feels like a bunch of people just going in to get 320 loot because it's really hard to get any other way, and that the challenge modes don't actually represent too much extra challenge in and of themselves. Now, of course, here I am telling you kind of this cheesy way of doing it, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt, I suppose, but the fact that you can still use the one orb strategy and still take down Golgoroth pretty quickly and without too much fuss makes it not all that much more challenging. In fact, you know, when the challenge mode comes around, I don't think that anybody's going to have a whole lot of extra difficulty getting this done. I do like the loot that you get out of this week. You get a new emblem that is very, very cool. I'll show you that at the end of the video when I go to the postmaster. It was actually waiting at the postmaster for me, and I will show you that emblem. It is very cool. It's purple. It's got a spider emblem on top of the purple background. It's very cool looking, so that almost alone is worth picking up this challenge mode for. I got 320 arms out of this, 320 gauntlets, which I sorely needed, and they came with sniper rifle reloader, which is awesome. You know, that's a really nice perk, especially for the raid. Overall, though, it is what it is. These challenge modes, I think, were hyped up a little bit more than they needed to be. We did, of course, get the next calcified fragment, so if you got the one from last week, you get the one from this week, and then when you get the one from Oryx, you should have the complete set, and we'll see finally what having 50 calcified fragments gets you, if anything. Be cool if it gets you an exotic weapon. I don't know if that rumor will pan out. It seems like Luke Smith really heavily pointed that way earlier, but again, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm actually looking forward to Oryx challenge mode next week. I think it has the opportunity to be really interesting. I hope that it's not quite as easy to complete as the Golgoroth or the War Priest ones were. I think there's actually some room to really kind of, you know, have some fun with it. You know, whether that be you have to, you know, do certain things that you normally wouldn't maybe when you're doing it. Like a lot of people don't kill the knights, so maybe you have to kill the knights. A lot of people select one runner to get the relic. Maybe you have to transfer that duty among multiple team members. Stuff like that I think could be really interesting. The way it's set up right now seems a little bit flat, but we'll see how it goes. You know, King's Fall hard mode, the Oryx fight is still very, very challenging for a lot of people. Once you hit 312 light, you know, and you have a whole fire team at 312 light, a lot of people say, okay, you know, it's not that challenging anymore. But, you know, I think really it's the hardcore players that are up at that light level at this point. So we'll have to wait and see what Oryx has in store for us. I'm hoping that it's going to actually be quite challenging. I know that that's not necessarily the opinion that everybody has, but I would certainly like to see it happen. It would be nice to get 320 primary weapons. Even if you don't like the raid weapons, you can use them to infuse some other weapons that you maybe love, maybe even some crucible weapons. But we'll have to see. I am also looking forward to, of course, the Sparrow Racing League being released this afternoon. I'm going to be all over that like white on rice this afternoon, as well as getting a brand new weapon balance update. So we'll have to play a little bit of Crucible this afternoon as well to see how all the new weapons pan out. But that's essentially going to do it for this video, guys. Golgoroth is dead. The method is, like I said, not too difficult. You're using that one orb strat, just kind of modifying it so that everybody jumps out of that pit, grabs the gaze in sequence. Really doesn't add too much challenge to the fight as long as everybody can kind of competently get that gaze. The coolest things that I thought that we got out of it, again, are the calcified fragment. Of course, I'm really looking forward to getting that 50th calcified fragment. And here is that emblem that I talked about before with the spider on it. I think that thing's really cool. So that's going to do it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Hit that like button if you liked the video. Hit subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time.